Hey everybody, this is Jason again, coming back at you with a review of Friday the 13th Part 2. A year after the success of Part 1, 1981 hits, and they're like, we need to make another movie. There was so much success of Part 1, surprisingly enough, and, unfortunately, they had already killed off Pamela Voorhees by, of course, chopping off her head. Fortunately, they had already introduced her son, Jason. So it was easy enough to say, hey, we can bring Jason into the picture with the same formula. So, right off the bat, it's supposed to be 3 months after the events of Part 1. Adrienne King's character is shown again. Apparently, she had moved back to California after the events, and she's having some problems, and she needed to face her fears. So she moved back to Crystal Lake, and that's why she's over there in the very beginning. It shows her just her normal routine. Obviously, she's going through the horror inside of her head nonstop. So that's why we are introduced back to the last events of Part 1, while she's having her nightmare. And so this part was always kind of scary for me because that's where you also see, the first time you see Jason walking outdoors, walking out in the streets, the wet streets. I always thought that was cool, good shot. You only see his foot. She goes through her day, and obviously she sees Pamela Voorhees' head inside of her fridge, and that's where she gets the ice pick right into the side of her head. Right after that, you're flashed basically 5 years later, and we're back into Crystal Lake again. It's another set of counselors. This time it's a bunch of counselors, and it's a counselor training center, and it's on the same lake as Part 1 events. In fact, they discuss it the entire time. Hey, down the road is the camp. Stay away from it. It's off limits. Obviously, you wouldn't want any of your counselors going in the area. With the rumor of what had happened 5 years earlier. Basically, it's the same principle in this one. Obviously, Jason goes, one by one, killing each of the counselors. Like I said in my last video, rumor has it at this point, the rumor was that Jason saw Jason saw his mother beheaded that night. And if you remember that scene, I do love that scene where they're all sitting around a campfire, and he's explaining the legend of Jason to everybody. And I don't really think he knew if he was telling the truth. It sounded like it was a legend, but it's funny because he's telling the exact truth. It was more of a joke to get it out of their system. At the end of it, you saw Ted jump out there with that mask and spear, which, funny, it comes back into play at the end of in the middle of the film, the spear. One of my favorite kills in this part is the double kill, the spear through the back of Jeff. Then you got Ginny, which is played by Amy Steele. And she did a great job in this film. Actually, it's funny. All these characters in here were very likable. They all did a great job. It's easy for me to go back to Part 2, over and over. I can watch it over and over. There was some memorable moments. This is more of the hillbilly Jason, is what I like to call it. You don't have the hockey mask yet, but you have the sack over the head. And there's something to me that's just frightening about his look here. I personally, by the end, you notice that they, take off the sack, and you see him at the end, which we'll discuss in a few seconds. I don't like the hair look on, obviously, but back then he was supposed to be a guy living out in the woods. He hasn't shaved, obviously. So I know what they were going at, but after looking at the other makeup on Jason throughout the rest of the series, this is one of my least favorites. Even though with the sack over its head, it's really creepy. And I do like that look. I do like the sack look over his head. There's something more realistic about this. Something where you almost feel like this could happen to you. I mean, right outside. So basically, it's Paul and Ginny at the very end of it. She finds his shack that he's been living at, and she's running in there to get rid of Jason, and she notices some of the dead bodies down at the bottom, along with Pamela Voorhees' head again with the sweater. So Jason comes in there. Obviously, she thinks she can outsmart Jason and put the sweater on and kind of pretend to be the mom, which is what kind of fools him a little bit. And then he notices, oh crap, that's not my mom. I see her in the back. So they have a little struggle, and then she takes the machete and stabs him right through the shoulder, and that's when he passes out and he's dead. And I'll give you my take at the ending of it. And I know people have argued over this, and everybody's open to their own interpretation, since obviously they don't go out and discuss it exactly. But to me, it's a dream. Yeah, you see Paul get up and move around after they kill Jason. They see, Muffin, the dog, come up to their cabin, and then you get Jason, smashing through the window, which is really scary in my opinion. But in my book, this is a dream sequence in my opinion, because they're throwing back at the original ending, which was also a dream sequence, according to Victor Miller. So that's just my interpretation. It's a complete dream. She killed him, and somewhere in there, we don't see it, Paul is supposed to be killed. At the end of it, she gets wheeled away in a stretcher looking for Paul. So in this, my opinion, he's dead. The dog Muffin is dead too, because obviously we see it, in the woods earlier in the movie. So again, I'm open to anybody having their own interpretations. So to me, there is no right or wrong answer. It's what you make it, up to be. That's what's cool about some of these movies. Some of it is open to interpretation. So, all right. Well, I'm at the end of it, and I do want to give this movie 4.5 masks out of 5. Does it live up to the end? I'm sorry. Does it live up to the part 1? Yeah, it's a pretty good sequel, in my opinion. I do like Victor Miller. I messed up on that one. I do like Steve Miner as the director. In fact, he's one of the, in my opinion, he's a great director, and he's one of the only ones, I believe, if not the only one, that is tied to more than one film. So yeah, again, 4.5 out of 5 Jason masks I give on this. Definitely highly recommended. If you're going to introduce somebody to the series and they've never seen it before, I definitely would watch at least the first 4. The cool thing about part 2 is that it's supposed to be the same weekend, so it's really cool that they can that you can watch it back to back to back. All right, everybody. Hope to see you soon, and I will do part 3 next. Have a good day, guys.